Hey there, my name is Kelly Dale and I'm owner of Off the Beaded Path located in Forest City, North Carolina. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to do diagonal right angle weave. Now there was a wonderful pattern in the December 2011 Bead and Button magazine on how to make this bracelet. And it was very, very, very pretty. I've had a lot of people ask me about it. This is it right here. It's a wonderful pattern by Diane Whiting, and she is an original Swarovski ambassador. And what she does in the pattern is she uses 3mm pearls with a beautiful clasp like this. Now I'm not going to teach you her bracelet, but I'm going to teach you a variation using some larger beads, and I'm basically wanting to teach you the technique. I had a lot of people who emailed me, called me, said, Kelly, can you help us? So basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing right angle weave. It's just going to be offset each row, so that as we actually work, you're going to be working each row in a diagonal instead of straight to the side or straight up and down. Now I've done a sample here. I'm going to be using 4mm rounds, and this has 3 boxes across. And this is what it'll look like. I'm using the bronze in the 4mm pearl, and it's very, very neat how this stitch works up. And I was really surprised actually how quick the bracelet went. So this bronze bracelet here is 7 inches exactly with the clasp. So I used 160 4mm in the actual bracelet, and then I used 4 on the clasp. And I'm going to show you a little different way to do the clasp. Now, the bracelet that I'm going to make today, I'm using 4mm round turquoise gemstones. You can use any round bead. You can use bicones if you want to. It's completely up to you. But I've just found that when using just the solid round, no facets, it's actually a little easier. Now, I'm also going to be showing you a thread technique that Diane Fitzgerald uses. I read about it in her Mastering or Dimensional Beadwork book, which is an excellent book, by the way. And so I wanted to show you that technique today, or how she does her thread, because I did it on this bracelet, and it's really nice because it feels really good and sturdy, and not once did I worry about the piece being loose. So I'm going to show you that. So you'll need 1 needle, and I'm going to be using 6-pound Fireline for the project. So go ahead and get your rounds and your needle and your Fireline together, and we'll get started. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is about how much thread you're actually going to use. For the video today, and for the length that I'm going to use, I did 2 arm lengths of 6-pound Fireline. Now, I've unroll the Fireline and I roll it all the way out as far as I can roll it, and then I grab it and I do 1 more time. So 2 arm lengths completely out as far as you can go of thread is what I'm going to be using, and we're going to double that. So go ahead, cut your thread that long, 2 complete arm lengths. Okay, cut that, and then thread your needle on, and I'm going to show you how to actually prepare it and get it ready to start working with. Once you have your needle threaded on, you want to get the 2 very end pieces of your thread together, and your needle should be in the center of your thread. Now I'm going to take these 2 pieces and I'm going to wrap them into a double knot. So I'm going to go through once, and then I'm going to go through twice. And I'm going to pull, making myself a knot, just like that. Now I'm actually going to use my thread burner, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come and I'm going to cut the thread about a 1/16 of an inch away from the knot. Now once I do that, I'm going to use my thread burner, and I'm going to melt the ends to the knot, just like that. Now, if you don't have a thread burner and you don't plan on using one, then just tie you a knot on the very end. That's all you have to do. And then make sure to get your needle centered onto the thread. Now, to start out, we're going to pick up 4 beads. Now, I'm going to hold, and I'm going to pull these beads down. And when you pull them down, you want to pull them down almost to the knot. Now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to separate my threads here at the knot. And I'm going to hold the thread and push my needle right on through, so that when I pull, now my thread is there in between the knot. Now to make sure that's nice and secure, I'm going to come back through the same bead let me pull it back here so that you can see. See, this was the last bead that I threaded on, and here's my knot. When I pull it through, I'm going to go back through that last bead that I just put on, and that'll help secure that knot a little bit. That's just my variation of the technique. And then I'm going to go through the bead right next to it. So essentially I'm going through 2 beads to get started. Now I'm going to pick up 3. My thread is coming out in an upward direction, so I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come up through the same bead to make my circle in the opposite direction. So that when you pull, now you have 2 boxes. To get in position for my 3rd box, I'm going to come through this bead here and this bead here. So this one and this one. So go through here. Make sure when you pull, you've got both your threads pulled through very well. Now Diane's technique is she waxes these threads to keep them together, and that's entirely fine if that's what you want to do. I'm going to pick up 3 beads. My thread is coming out in a downward direction, so I'm going to come around and come through it going this direction to make my circle. Remember, the whole point of right angle weave is to make circles. There is my 3rd circle. Now to get into position for the next row, you always want to be coming out of the middle bead of your set of 3. I'm only going to do mine 3 boxes long. So when I come in this downward motion here through the center, I'm going to come right through the middle bead here in the top that I'm going to be working with. That gets me to my next row, and now I'm in position to start my next set of boxes. So the first thing I'm going to do, and this is what you'll want to remember, is you'll want to remember a pattern. Our pattern is 3, 2, and 3. Just remember, a pattern is 3, 2, and 3. First time, we're going to pick up 3. My thread is coming out in this direction, so we want to make our circle. So I'm going to come back through the same bead to make my circle and pull. Now we need to get into position for our next circle, which is over here. So I'm going to come through the 3 beads that I just added, so 1, 2, and 3, and then I'm going to come through this top bead of my last box on the first row. So I'm going to come through this bead, the 3rd one here that I had added, and then through the top bead of the last box. Alright, now first time we added 3, this time we're adding 2. So I'm going to pick up 2. Okay, a box consists of 4 beads. This is bead 1 and bead 2 of my box, and then I have 3 and 4 in my hand. So I want my circle to come around in this direction here. So I'm going to come right through this bead here, coming in the upward direction. Here. So now I have 2 boxes of my new row, and you can see how they're coming in a diagonal motion. Now, to get ready for my third box, which is this one here, your third box will always sit out to the side by itself. I'm going to come through this bead and this bead here. So through 1 and then through 2. And to keep my pieces nice and tight, there's 2 things that you'll want to remember. Number 1 is I normally keep my finger on the bead that I'm pulling through. And number 2, the biggest mistake I see people make when they pull their thread is they pull it away from the piece. Don't ever do that. Always pull the thread the direction that it's coming out of the bead, and that will help you to keep your tension nice and tight as you stitch. So remember I said our pattern was 3, 2, and 3. So the first time I picked up 3, second time I picked up 2. Now for my third box, which is going to be out here on the end, I'm going to pick up 3. My thread is coming out here in a downward direction. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come back around through the same bead to make a circle and pull. So that now I have 2 rows, and you can see how they're going in a diagonal motion. To get into position though for the next row, I said we always need to be coming out of the middle bead here on my row of 3. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to come right through that middle bead just like that and pull. Okay, our pattern is 3, 2, and 3. So I'm going to pick up 3 rounds. Here's my 3 rounds I'm picking up. My thread is coming out in this direction. I want to take to make my circle, so I'm going to come around to make that circle. I'm going to pull that on through. So that now my first box of the new row is in place. Now to get into position for the next box, I need to come through the 3 I just added, and then through this very top one here on the end. So through the 3 I just added, so 1, then 2, 3, and then I'm going to come through the top bead of the next circle. So I'm going to come right through this one bead and pull that on through. So my pattern, like I said, is 3, 2, and 3. So now I'm going to pick up 2. I want to make the circle. Again, a box consists of 4 beads. So I have 1, 2, and then I have 2 on my needle. I want my circle to come around in this direction. So I'm going to come up through this bead here of my first box, so that now I have 2 boxes. To get into position for my third box here on the end, I need to come through this bead and this bead here. So through 1, and then 2. And remember, I put my finger to keep it tight. I put my finger on the bead that I'm pulling through, and I pull it straight through the way the direction is that the bead or my thread is coming out of the bead. So I added 3 and then 2, so my third box is 3. So I'm going to pick up 3 beads. I want to come around in my circle. So I'm going to come around and back up through the same, or going back down through the same bead that I'm coming out of to make my circle. Just like this. And then now I'm going to come up through the middle bead of this top row. So there's my 3 beads I'll be working off of. and there's the bead I'm going through here at the top. And you'll notice you're always going through that middle bead in the same direction. Now you can see as we work our diagonal, but when we actually do the bracelet, it'll be sitting like this. I know this looks kind of funky right here, but don't worry, we go back and we fix that at the end, and so that everything will look nice and straight, just like this is here. So what you want to do is continue doing your rows of 3 until you reach the desired length for your bracelet, and leave enough room for your clasp, which is just only about a half an inch, and half to 3/4 of an inch. Alright, so I'm almost to the end, and I've run out almost of thread, but I still have to add my clasp. So what I've done is I prepared a new piece of string, with the knot on the end, and it's about, I only cut off about 1 yard, so it's about a half a yard long. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start down here about 3 rows back, and I'm going to take my needle, and it depends on what kind of beads you use. If you use beads with smaller holes, it'll just stick. Like, let me see if I can find a spot here where I added, and it'll be really hard to tell, but see, like right here I added a little bit of thread and it just stuck because it was too small to go through the actual piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate my thread here because I'm using something that has bigger holes. So I'm going to go between my thread between 2 beads. I'm going to pull, and then I'm going to stick my needle through the thread here between my knot, and I'm going to pull, making sure that goes right in between those 2 beads there. Now I'm going to stitch up to come out at the same point where my other thread is coming out. So I'm going to stitch through my beads, and your bead, or your knot, should go in between some of your thread, or I'm sorry, your knot should go in your beads if your hole is too big. Now I'm up here. My threads are coming out right next to each other, so I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to tie these 2 threads together in a couple of knots. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my short thread and I'm going to stitch through my beadwork until I can't really use my needle anymore, or it's hard to get it through. And then I'm going to take my thread burner and trim off that thread, so that now that needle is finished, and I'm coming out here on the very end. Now your end is at a diagonal, and we need it to be straight like this to attach it to our bracelet. So what we want to do for this very last bead here on the end is we're going to pick up 3 beads, just like we're adding 1 here off the end. So I want to come back around to make my circle. So I'm going to go through that bead so that now the end is straight, just like it is here for my bracelet. So I'm going to come up through 2 of the beads that I just added. I'm going to go through this one and this one. And now I'm ready to add my clasp. Now this is a technique that I learned out of a kit that I had purchased a couple of years ago, and it's a fun technique on how to add the clasp like that. It just gives it a little decoration. Use it, not use it, it's completely up to you. But when using the 4mm, I found that this clasp works great. When you lay the clasp up next to the bracelet, just like this, you see that the 2 end holes perfectly align for the part of the clasp. So, if you have a 2-strand clasp that will work with, fantastic. If the 2-strand clasp that I have is close together like this, and so it won't work. So to prepare my clasp, what I'm going to do, since it's all I've got on hand, is I'm actually going to take a pair of cutters and I'm going to cut that middle loop off. And if you have a little file, you can file that edge down a little bit. But I'm actually going to do this on both ends. Sometimes if you don't have something that you need on hand, you can improvise, and that's the greatest thing ever. So now that I've cut that, it's going to be a perfect size for what I need. So like I said, if you have a little file, go ahead and file those ends down. Now I'll put my needle through one hole, and I'm going to pick up a 4mm and a size 15 seed bead. Now you only need 4 size 15 seed beads, and that's just for the clasp here. So you let it slide all the way down. I'm going to skip the seed bead, and I'm going to come back down through the round bead, through the loop, and then I'm going to come through this bead here. To start, I was coming out here, so when I go back down through the 4mm and the loop, then I'll come down through the bead right next to it. So through that one, and then through the bead there. And I will pull. So that now, that sits right in between my 2 end beads here. I'm going to take the needle and I'm going to come up through the very next bead right next to it here. So I'm going to go through that one. And then I'm going to come up through the other hole of my clasp. Pick up your 4mm round and size 15 seed bead. Let those drop. You're going to skip the size 15 seed bead and go back down through the round, the loop, and then through your last bead here on the end. So that when you pull, it looks just like this. Now, if you want to go, or what you want to do is stitch back through and reinforce these 2 beads a good many times. Once you're finished, go ahead and tie this end off, and then you're ready to do the other end. So I finished this end and I'm ready to start on the other end. So what I'm going to do, I've put on a new piece of thread and I have prepared it just like I did all the rest of my pieces that I've worked with thus far. And so what I'm going to do, I want to be coming out of the middle bead just like I normally would up here. So I'm going to come under the thread between 2 of my beads, and I'm going to stick the needle through my threads there where the knot is and pull. Then I'm going to stitch up through my beads to come out of the middle bead up here. Alright, we're going to pick up 3 beads. I'm going to come back around to make my circle. So that now, when I pull it, I have a flat end instead of having the diagonal end. And I want to come through this bead and this bead here to get into position to add my clasp. So 1, 2. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to hold it just like this. So, and I'm not going to take the clasp apart, so that way I know my piece will stay straight. So I'm going to come up through the first hole, pick up a 4mm and a size 15. Let those drop down. I'm going to go back down through the 4mm, the loop, and then through the bead right next to the one I'm coming out of here on the base. Then I'm going to come up through the next bead. I'm going to go through the loop of my clasp. I'm going to pick up one 4mm and one size 15. Let those drop down. Skip the 15 and go back down through the 4mm, the loop, and then through the last bead here on the end. And pull through. So that finishes out your clasp. Now, if you do not like the look of this, add your loops just like you normally would with wire protectors or whatever you want to do. This is just a suggestion. This is not how you have to do it. Tie you a couple of half-inch knots and then you're finished. Here's a look at the finished piece. As you can tell, I used this one using 4mm rounds, this one using 4mm gemstones, and you can see that the ones with the gemstones are the same exact amount of beads, but they're just a little bigger. This one's just a little bigger. So just be careful and pay attention to that. But don't stop with this. You know, you can embellish the top of this. You know, there's so many fun things that you can do with this pattern. So I hope you enjoyed learning diagonal right angle weave. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure and check because Sammy's actually going to upload another video. I'm going to do a book review, my first ever book review for you guys. And I'm going to tell you about an exciting contest that we have coming up this whole month of May and part of June. So be sure and look for that sometime after this video, and also be sure and come back next week where you'll learn another fun beading project. Be sure and check us out on our website, Off the Beaded Path beadstore.com, or follow us on Facebook, or just shoot us an email, and we'll be happy to chat with you, or you know, whatever you want to do. So you have a great